Hello and welcome to the arbitration conversation. So in this conversation, this will be a lot of fun. We're going to talk to a friend to the north in Canada, Myriam Seers. And Myriam, she's a real expert in arbitration, and she practices in litigation and dispute resolution at Torys LLP in Canada, with a particular focus on investor state arbitration, international commercial arbitration, and commercial litigation in a variety of industries. But she's also the vice chair of the ICC Arbitration Canada, or I guess you call it Canada Arbitration Committee, with the ICC, which is very cool. And we'll want to hear about that. So first of all, Myriam, thank you so much for taking time to answer some questions with the arbitration conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's very, very exciting.
So as we start, it's always fun to kind of hear about, and I know my students really enjoy learning how people sort of get into international commercial arbitration, right? I mean, every student, it seems like I hear this all the time. Gosh, how can I actually get involved in international commercial arbitration? So what was your journey? How did you become involved with the ICC, for example, and be the head of this arbitration committee?
Well, actually, so the ICC position is very recent. So why don't I park that for one moment and talk about where I started or how I started and get to that. And I think the short answer for me would be languages. So I speak French and I learned Spanish. So really early on in my career, I had an opportunity to get involved in an international arbitration case that had to do with a mine in Côte d'Ivoire in Africa. And I say a mine, a proposed mine that was shut down because of military unrest in the west of that country. And the reason I got involved in it as opposed to somebody else was I spoke French, and it's a French speaking country, so everything was done in French. We were working with French speaking local counsel, French speaking counsel from Paris, and so on. So language helped me out there, and then Spanish helped me out in so many different files that I've had since involving projects in Latin America. And since then I've picked up Portuguese and I'm working on files with Brazil. So
Nice.
in the international sphere, everything that one can do to acquire other languages is always a plus, because that's I think the single biggest asset you can bring to a matter. Other than
Absolutely.
obviously the legal skills are the table stakes, pardon me. The languages are the extra skills you can bring to it.
Absolutely. And so how about with the ICC committee?
Yeah, so actually in Canada, the ICC Canada Arbitration Committee serves two functions. So it's the liaison with the ICC, the broader kind of worldwide ICC organization, which administers international arbitrations that have ICC clauses. But it's also sort of our national organizing association for international arbitrators and arbitration council in Canada. So we don't have a separate, Canadian Arbitration Association. So it's both things, and it's an election, so I ran in the election and I was successful. So it's very, very exciting. Professor Janet Walker is the chair, so we're working very closely together. We've got a lot of new initiatives. One, just on the topic of languages, I'm very passionate about involving forging closer ties with similar organizations in Latin America and in Brazil that we're doing. So a lot of projects on the go. That's really fun.
That's really cool. Yeah, we actually had an arbitration conversation with Professor Janet Walker.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so this is really neat. So let's talk about technology disputes. So I'd love to sort of pick your brain. And obviously, we talk a lot about the use of arbitration in technology disputes because you can have an expert arbitrator, which can be very beneficial if it's a dispute that involves technology. But maybe you could share your thoughts in terms of what sorts of disputes end up in arbitration in technology.
Yeah, I think there's a wide range. I think you'll have the very high dollar value ones are going to be, I don't Google versus Amazon, whatever, that kind of stuff is going to look very similar as a dispute resolution process as in any other industry. What I think is really interesting, though, and I think we're still writing, we don't know yet what the future has in store, is disputes involving technology, either technology companies, the use of technology, or otherwise the fact that people are now interacting with each other across borders using technology in unprecedented ways, and all the disputes that might arise from that. So whereas in the past you had, American company, American consumer sues American company for a problem in American court, period, or arbitration. Now you have a user in Italy downloading an app from, a company in Korea, which is owned by a company in California, which is, designed by, people in a different country. So you have all of it's happening online, and the borders aren't particularly relevant to any of it. So where does that lead you? Law, I don't think, has caught up with that, because law is still very jurisdiction based. I think that arbitration can come and step in and resolve some of these problems. I don't know that we have all the solutions today, but I think that a lot of thinking is going on about what some of those solutions might be. And using arbitration arbitration is the obvious choice to address disputes that arise out of that context. It's just a matter of finding out, or figuring out and brainstorming out what specifically those mechanisms will be that make sense for those situations.
Yeah, I love that, and kind of thinking through, and these are questions that some of us have been sort of researching and talking about and brainstorming. UNSI Trial Working Group 3, I was the liaison for the American Bar Association. And what we were trying to do is create an online dispute resolution system
Yeah.
for these kind of cross-border claims in e-commerce. Because as you note, a lot of these claims are now international in scope. So I guess, that UNSI Trial Working Group 3 ended because there was a lot of dispute about the use of arbitration clauses. So what do you think, what sort of tools do you think we could bring to bear in order to really promote this idea and to really allow for access to justice on an international scale when you're talking about these disputes where technology is involved?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that working group ended, because I think there's a need for it. There's a need for this kind of thinking, and technology has disrupted every industry. Technology companies have disrupted every industry they have entered into. For example, when, Airbnb showed up and started having people stay in other people's homes for a fee and not calling that a hotel, the hotel industry didn't know what hit it, So that has to happen to arbitration in a way, to dispute resolution generally. There needs to be disruption. There needs to be outside the box thinking. And there needs to be there need to be solutions found to these new problems. And if the arbitration community doesn't find them, then someone else will find them. I think an online dispute resolution is exactly the solution for many of these types of claims. Certainly if you're talking about smaller claims. So I think that the current global pandemic situation has taught us that for whatever size of claim, it may be appropriate in a way that perhaps people wouldn't have agreed with 6 months ago. And I think we've all learned very, very rapidly that actually it's possibly desirable, versus the way things were done before. So I think there are obviously a lot of questions and a lot of details to be thought out as to what makes sense for what type of dispute and how you do it specifically. But I think online tools are the future, and it makes all the sense in the world to me that intelligent people would put their heads together to figure out just what that looks like.
Yeah, I think those are such good points. I mean, you're absolutely right. And it's funny because a lot of us who have been working in this kind of space of thinking about online dispute resolution marvel at how quickly everything has moved now with COVID, because people are sort of putting their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
And really what we're seeing in the world of arbitration with technology and sort of the disruption, as you say, and definitely online mediation, online arbitration, growing by leaps and bounds, thinking about how we can make it more accessible, right? Especially to allow for access to justice in smaller dollar claims.
Yeah.
But the question is how, what things need to change in your view, if you kind of could paint your perfect picture.
Well, look, I don't pretend to have a perfect picture in my head that I could paint, but some ideas. I guess in terms of apps, it would be great if there were an integrated dispute resolution system integrated into the app, whatever the app is, where a customer's complaint could be, maybe I'm talking about a customer situation, or it's whatever the situation is, an app user and the app company. That kind of dispute arising from that then gets dealt with and resolved through the same app or a different app, but just that the user experience doesn't need to morph into, okay, now you need to bring a lawsuit in, Florida when you're based in Taiwan. Doesn't make any sense. So so that kind of system where it's kind of an online platform, whether it's an app or not, there's a roster of arbitrators that are part of that system. The rules are adapted to make sense. I think in certain types of smaller claims, at the risk of talking myself out of a job, maybe counsel are not necessary.
No, I mean, I think, well, and I'm going to invite you, in fact, so there's a book I wrote with Colin Rule called The New Handshake, and essentially we argue for this kind of a system.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, so of course.
Really, I just read your book and then I stole all your ideas and I thought I would pass them off as my own.
You made
You
me
caught
so
me. You caught me.
No, here's the good news though, is I think it shows that, people are warming to this idea. And I love your point in thinking about disruption, because I do think, of course, if you just keep entrenched in doing things the same way they've always been done, that's not going to work anymore, especially now that we know that you can use an online mechanism.
And why would the companies who have, disrupted entire industries that no one thought could be disrupted accept that as the model?
I know, isn't it funny?
It's not appropriate for them.
And as
But
much as
yes.
those of us who love travel, of course, we want to have to fly all over the place, but who wants to pay for that anymore? Right?
Well, now you get to travel only for fun. So no, but I think every type of there's just a lot of new types of situations arising. We need to think about them individually because they're all going to be different. So the sort of the consumer and app company model is just one thing, which is likely to generate small claims, which might be very appropriate for a more streamlined process. Obviously, there are a lot of different types of claims where that won't be the case, but I think just a general rethink of the way things are done, I mean, the whole physical hearing versus virtual hearing debate is very old now, but where it's November 2020, like more than 6 months into the global pandemic. So everyone has talked about that issue to death. But I think what it's shown us is that the old way of doing things doesn't need to remain the way of doing things.
Yeah.
Adaptation is possible and desirable and in many ways leads to better results. So let's look at new situations with a fresh pair of eyes and sort out new systems that work for those new situations.
Yeah, 100%. I believe strongly in dispute system design and really doing a functional analysis, looking at the context of the case, the parties involved, that resonates. That's really great point. So
Yeah.
this has been so much fun talking with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. No, thank you. Super fun. And I just really am appreciative of your taking your time with us.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for having me.